All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us. And, yeah, we got a lot of football games to talk about over the weekend, right? Of course, it'll be NFL Week 2. We got the Aces in the playoffs on Sunday. We got the Vegas Golden Knights in action at the T-Mobile Arena over the weekend. And, oh, yeah, we got a pretty big UNLV football game. As you know, Chris Wynn, tough loss last weekend against Arkansas State. I guess you could say there is somewhat of a quarterback controversy. So the guy we have with us on the line right now, speaking of quarterbacks, he is the last UNLV quarterback to get UNLV to a bowl game. He is also one of the voices of UNLV football, does a great job doing the color commentary. That would be Caleb Herring. Caleb, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. So tell me, what is it like in Evanston, Illinois right now? I know you're on the road with the Rebels. What is there to do out there?
Oh, there's plenty to do. I mean, Chicago's a great place. I mean, we're not that far away. Plenty of public transit to get you around. But, of course, Wrigley Field's the main thing that I'm interested in as a sports guy. I'm heading over to Wrigley. They got a game against the Pirates. Obviously, being in Chicago, it's a must-do for any sports fan. So got to check out Wrigley Field. That's what's on the list to do today.
That is so cool. I'm jealous. A lot of history there at Wrigley Field, to say the least, and a pretty good baseball team they got out there, too. All right, Caleb, let's start with last week before we preview the game tomorrow. We all know what happened out there against Arkansas State. I consider it basically a must-win if they wanted to make a bowl game, and I know it's early in the season to say that. Armani Rogers, let's just call it for what it is. He was absolutely atrocious. What do you make of this performance? Not just Armani Rogers, but the team. And, you know, what do you make of that whole game, and particularly Tony Sanchez, his comments after the game about the quarterback so-called controversy?
Well, I think it's, number one, everybody understands that game was a disappointment. I think, and that's a good thing, if you want to be optimistic about it, knowing that game was a disappointment. Arkansas State's a quality opponent. They've been to bowl games each of the last 8 seasons, so they're a quality opponent. So it was kind of a measuring stick game, and you wanted to at least fare well in that game. I think the spread was within 3 points, so it was supposed to be a kind of a toss-up game.
Right.
To come out and perform the way they did was very disappointing, and I think you can feel that in coach's statements after the game. Obviously, the quarterback play was pointed at, and often is pointed at in games like that where it's a blowout, runaway victory like that, and Coach Sanchez is right. The quarterback play has to be better, but I think after looking at the film and really watching the game and dissecting the game, there was a lot of different errors that contributed to the passing attack being under par, so to speak, and that included drop passes, breakdowns of protection, things like that the blame can't solely fall on the quarterback for that. But obviously Armani has to be better. There's some throws he missed. There's some decisions that he missed and things like that. And he understands that. As a quarterback, I've been in that exact position where you're playing a game that's not at all representative of how good you are, how good you can be. And I think Armani understands that. He's had a good week of practice this week, and Coach understands that, and he knows he expects better from his players, and that's kind of what he said in that statement. He needs better from Armani. I think, of course, anytime the quarterback controversy, quote-unquote, comes up, everybody starts looking at replacements, changes, and things like that. But you really look at what Coach said. He's saying he needs better play from the quarterback position. That's something that they had to evaluate. And this week they evaluated it. They looked at the film, and based on that, I think they determined that Armani still gives them the best chance of winning. And it's just about game planning for the next week at this point. And
I probably don't disagree with that he probably does give UNLV the best chance to win. But with that being said, it wasn't just Armani Rogers. I'm going to be honest. I thought the play calling was terrible. The defensive side of the football, terrible. Special teams, terrible. This was across the board a horrible performance. What kind of accountability and responsibility do you put on the coaching staff, Caleb, and starting with Tony Sanchez?
Well, I think everybody takes, in a loss like that, you can't put it individual on anybody, but definitely the coaching staff has taken their share of responsibility. I think they understand that. I mean, the players play the game and the coaches coach it. And I think when the players don't look like they have a rhythm and the play calling is not really being received well by the players on the field or executed well, then the coaches have to look themselves as a face too, just like players do. I mean, Armani had to do some soul searching, and everybody in the program does at the same time. So I think that, like you said, that type of performance on a Saturday is really inexcusable if you're going to be honest about it. But I think the good thing is they understand that, and I think they did what you're supposed to do is look themselves in the mirror, reevaluate some situations, and the scheme, the play calling, all that type of stuff, your personnel, how to use them, and all those things have been addressed this week in practice, which is, tip of the hat to the coaching staff for this week rebounding after they're trying to put that loss behind them and move on to the next game. So, there's definitely a share to go around. It's not just on Armani. It's not just on the offensive line, not just on the defense. It's on top to bottom from the program, and I think that is understood. and it echoed throughout this week on how to reevaluate and get back to the basics and get back to some winning as they expect to do this year.
So, Caleb, both these teams, of course, looking to set the reset button, of course, to Northwestern. Tough loss, obviously, in the Bay Area to Stanford in their one game this season. Now this is their first game back up in Evanston. You take a look at this from a Rebel standpoint, particularly offensively. They're going to look to exploit this defense, right? I mean, this defense allowed Stanford to run 73 total plays for over 360 yards of offense. Defensively, this is a unit that missed a ton of tackles. I mean, they basically have a huge issue when it comes to a pass rush. So that's going to be those. I got to believe those are some of the things that Sanchez and his staff are going to look to take advantage of as they try to pull off that upset up north.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's chance for opportunity. There's opportunity for big plays. There's opportunity to control possessions, to control and set the tempo of the game. I think that's favorable for UNLV because they have a running game that's kind of been really solid over the past 4 years, finishing in the top 25. So controlling the tempo of the game looks like something they'll be able to do against Northwestern. Albeit it's a Big Ten opponent, they're known for their toughness, but I think UNLV can match them actually in the toughness category and exploit some of the things defensively, like you mentioned, that they struggled with getting off the field against Stanford in their first game. Obviously, coming off a bye, they had some time to really game plan UNLV and to focus in on them. So that might make it a little bit more challenging to exploit those weaknesses. But I think it is something that they can attack UNLV offensively at least. And then for Northwestern on the offensive side of the ball, they're not without their share of controversy as well. I mean, They started Hunter Johnson. T.J. Green came in, got injured. He's out for the season. So Johnson got in and had a bunch of negative plays, was sacked a couple times, threw a couple interceptions. Just not a very good game at quarterback to finish that game against Stanford, which wasn't a blowout by any means, but it was an ugly game for Northwestern. They didn't move the ball very effectively offensively. So I think their struggles offensively also make some opportunities for UNLV on the defensive side of the ball. Johnson's going to throw the ball in some tight windows. He's trying to force things and put the ball up for grabs, and UNLV hasn't done a great job so far this season of creating turnovers. So there's some chances now this week to maybe do that, create some turnovers and swing the momentum that way. But yeah, it's a great opportunity coming off of a tough loss to kind of rewrite history or redeem yourself, so to speak, for UNLV and come up with a big upset.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that. If you're just joining us, former UNLV quarterback Caleb Herring, who is one of the voices of UNLV football right now. Okay, Caleb, so we all know what happened last week. We talked about that. I don't think anybody looked at this game on the schedule against Northwestern and said, oh, that should be a win for UNLV. I don't think anybody logically expected or still expects UNLV to win this game. However, with that being said, and I think it's a big if, but if UNLV could somehow steal a win, which would be enormous, I think you can cross out the loss last week and say, okay, they start the season 2-1, they're right back on track. So while last week was, I think, a horrendous loss, and I think we all could agree on that, not just the loss, but the way they lost, when you look at the schedule, it's not easy. If they can somehow pull off an upset here, I mean, we're talking enormous, and I think it gets them right back on track and gives them a chance to win a bowl game. Would you agree with that? Or to get to a bowl game, I should say.
I think if you're going to, based on preseason, if you looked at the schedule before the season, this wasn't one of the games you chalked up as a win. If you're, projecting the wins and losses that they would have at the end, and you probably had Arkansas State as a win. So essentially, just flip the two games if they were able to pull up the upset here. So 2-1 going into the bye week is kind of what you would have figured anyway. So it kind of doesn't matter where you get the win; it's just where you get them. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to look back at the schedule and say, that Arkansas State loss has any more, just because they got blown out, it's not two losses all of a sudden, just one loss. So very early in the season, they're going to have to make it up somewhere. Northwestern is one of those teams, like I said, if you were projecting, it would have been in the loss column if you're one of the outside analysts. But I think that would definitely be a big-time rebound to switch those things and get the win back this week against Northwestern. But the season is tricky. College football is so tricky. I mean, everybody has the preseason predictions of what they think is going to happen, and nobody across the nation would have bet that Georgia State would beat Tennessee week 1. So that those kind of things happen in college football. So I think the right approach, if you're within the team now, that we can speculate outside, of course, all we want to, but from within the team, the approach has to be week to week, 1 week at a time. So the objective right now is to be 1-0, to beat Northwestern, and then so on, so forth and so on. I think if the team gets caught up in that kind of projection, then I think you've already lost the season. If you're expecting to lose or expecting that a game is a lost cause before you even play it, it's pretty bad to do that as a team in the locker room. But of course, we're going to do it outside. We're not playing on Saturdays. We're not coaching. We're just kind of analyzing the thing as it goes along. But definitely getting this win would be a rebound for, and it's kind of a makeup win for losing against Arkansas State the way they did.
I mean, look, make no mistake about it. It's a tall task, right, Caleb? I mean, you look at the numbers. The Rebels are, 1-8 against the Big Ten since 2003 when they go into these matchups on the road. And that was back before you played there, right? And we're talking about,
right.
but also we do understand that Big Ten teams, particularly early in the season, they've had some issues with teams from smaller conferences or from lesser known conferences, for example, where they've gone in there and been competitive and in some cases have won football games. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility by any stretch that the Rebels could go up there and get and pull out a victory.
Absolutely not. And I think the Rebels with Tony Sanchez have fared well against Power 5 conference team. At UCLA, they were down to the fourth quarter. The USC, again, tied in going into the fourth quarter or in the second half, late in the second half at least. And against Michigan also played them pretty well at the Big House. So, I mean, outside of Ohio State in these past few years, they've fared well, UNLV has, against Power 5 teams. Of course, not pulling out the win, but it's no shock. It wouldn't be a shock to see UNLV play well on the road against one of these Power 5 teams. They've done it in the past. So, just that Northwestern's not on that caliber of Power 5 schools where you're talking about Michigan, Ohio State.
Right. In
my opinion, if you're looking at the team on for face value, Northwestern's not that, especially this year with their quarterback Caleb on their side. They're kind of trying to redefine themselves as a team around that. So there's opportunity, and it would look like a huge upset to everybody else around the country. But based on what Coach Sanchez knows about his team and how he understands, I think, and the players understand that last week's performance against Arkansas State doesn't define them and who they want to be in the 2019 year. I think they expect and fully anticipate to compete at least against this type of opponent. And
I would hope so.
I think they wouldn't be surprised about getting the win.
All right, so let's talk now as a whole in general about this program. Sadly, I have to introduce you as the last quarterback to get UNLV to a bowl game. I'm sure that's not how you would prefer to be introduced, even though you deserve those accolades. We all know this, Caleb, and I hate to say it, but it's true. This is a losing culture. This is a football program that has been, for lack of a better term, really bad the last several decades. That's just a fact. Now they're going in, next year they're going to be playing in the Raiders Stadium, okay? I mean, Francois, who is the athletic director at UNLV, has a tough task here. We all know what's going to happen. We could read between the lines. We've heard her statements. If Sanchez does not make a bowl game, I would be shocked to see him back here next year. I think we all could agree on that. So it's either he makes a bowl game and he comes back, or he doesn't. How many people are going to be in that stadium next year? How many people is it going to hold, Chris? This stadium, this Raiders stadium, 60,000?
Upwards of 60,000,
yeah.
65,000 plus.
Caleb, this stadium's not going to look too good if you only get 10,000 people in the stadium, right? I mean, what do you see? Where do you see this program going?
Well, I think there's still going to be excitement at a novel base, at least, just to get into Allegiant Stadium. It's going to be a much cheaper ticket to get into Allegiant Stadium and see the new stadium, this new toy that the city has. For a Rebel game as opposed to a Raider game next season. So that, at first at least, if you're worried about attendance, I think you'll see attendance initially. And I don't think that the season's lost. We don't know where they're going to finish yet this year. The things haven't played out. But I think credit to Tony Sanchez before we more. Like he's done so much for the program. And like you said, the culture for UNLV football was what it was before he got here. And I think he's done great things. There's been leaps and bounds in the program as far as the investment that the community has made in getting the program where it needs to be to compete in the Mountain West Conference. There's been so much that has been done behind him, and it hasn't translated to wins and losses yet as far as, finishing the season and the postseason and all that kind of stuff. But, I mean, the Fertitta complex alone has changed the culture. Just going to the school now, if you haven't been and you go see that complex, that doesn't happen without Tony Sanchez, in my mind, if I'm being completely honest about Tony and his impact on the program. But no, I don't think you worry about the projected, ticket sales or how the arena's going to look, because San Diego State has had to fill an NFL stadium.
Yeah.
If you've been to those games when you play a college game, it's impossible. There's no way you're going to fill it up. I mean, I hope that's not anybody's expectation is to fill that stadium.
Yeah.
But I think initially, just having that brand new stadium, you'll get.
No, there's no question. I want to interject real quickly, and you tell me if you disagree on this. I like Tony Sanchez. I think we all do. I think he's a really good guy. He's an easy guy to work to root for, and trust me, I haven't said that about every UNLV coach in the past.
And
Caleb,
he came in behind the eight ball.
Make no mistake. Yeah, I agree. But with that being said, let's be logical here. If he doesn't have a relationship with the Fertittas, I'm not sure he's still the UNLV football coach. And while you're right, he has done a lot of great things for UNLV, and he's a good dude. I think if he doesn't have a relationship with the Fertittas, I'm not sure any of this stuff gets done. Is that a fair statement?
It may be. That probably is. But I think you can't say that he, is Tony Sanchez without that relationship. So it's one of those things. If I pull pieces of who he is away from him, then that's, I can't say then that he's Tony Sanchez. If I say he wasn't such a successful coach at Gorman, then he wouldn't be Tony Sanchez either. So I think he is who he is, and he has the clout that he has and the respect that he has in his circles, and that goes into the totality of who Tony Sanchez is. So that, of course we can say if he didn't, and speculate as to how impactful he would be without these elements of his person. But it is what it is. He has that relationship, and if that's the cause for why he's around, so then that's just what it is. So I don't want to pull pieces of who he is apart, but his relationships and what he's done in the community has led to his success and what he's been able to do for UNLV, and that's, I think, important.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Totally.
Bigger than just the field of play, and I think that's the politics and the other side of coaching that a lot of people don't appreciate. Is there's so much more that goes into being a successful coach than just having wins and losses on the field. So that's part of the essence that is Tony Sanchez, if you will.
So, Caleb, we talked about this on Monday a little bit. As you look at the entire landscape of college football, is there a program or programs out there where we can look to for UNLV to maybe model themselves after, or maybe because they're looking to make an ascension, right? They're looking to improve, make the program better, get to another level, if you will, when it comes to UNLV football. Do you think there are programs out there that they can take a look at and say, oh, you know what? They were able to do it. We can do it that way too.
Well, I think you look at a couple that were kind of around in the Mountain West first. Look at TCU when they were around in the Mountain West. They had an ascension, so to speak, to the levels that they extended. They were top 5 in the nation at some points and competing for Rose Bowl championships, and they ascended, and from kind of the ranks of a small non-Power 5 conference to that level. Also, like UCF 10 years ago, nobody's talking about UCF, but
absolutely
they have respect in the college football realm where they're a major program. They're not in the Power 5 yet, but there's talks that they may be able to make that jump to ACC or something like that because of the success that they had, and that came from investing in your program, taking your lumps early, yes, but things like the Fertitta complex are some of the things that you saw UCF doing when they made their ascension. They invested in the program, and with what they were able to recruit and find from that place, were able to ascend to the heights that they are now, where they're making claims of national championship titles on an undefeated season. So those kind of things can happen. And that's, I think UNLV right now, amazingly, like you said, has not been a winning program in the last decade, hasn't had very much success, not winning seasons outside of the one team that I was fortunate enough to be a part of. But there's been a kind of a losing culture, so to speak. And for the program to make the leaps that they have in these recent years under Sanchez, as far as what they've been able to do to push the program forward. And some of it just happened to be with coincidence with the soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders deciding to make the trip and the Allegiant Stadium getting completed. But the Fertitta complex was added into that. No programs, I don't think, are able to make those leaps and bounds after losing the program. It's hard to get people to want to invest that much into a program while you're losing. And I think that will be a part of Tony's legacy. Whether or not he ends up staying around for it and being able to enjoy the benefits of Allegiant Stadium, that's yet to be determined. But he will forever, and I think everybody else should appreciate him as the coach that got that done.
Yeah, and I think that's fair.
That is vital to the program.
And I think that's very fair. Okay, Caleb, this is going to be my last question for you. We got about a minute left here. I want your prediction. What happens, Northwestern, UNLV, Saturday? Give me your prediction. What happens in this game?
I think UNLV comes out and controls the tempo early. I think they come out with a chip on their shoulder. I think there's going to be some rust on the end of Northwestern. And I think it plays into UNLV's favor because they need to come out fast against anybody and play with a lead. I think they strike early. UNLV gets back to the ground game and establishes a run. And I think they make things hard for Hunter Johnson in his second playing experience of the season. I think it's a close game, and this might be a bold prediction, but I got a feeling just being around the team, they're locked in right now. I got a feeling UNLV pulls this off.
Wow.
I got a feeling.
Wow. I got to say, this would be a huge win for UNLV. And listen, we all pull for this team, and I hope you're right, Caleb. Caleb, thank you so much for joining us. By the way, you can also catch Caleb, our friend show, Brian
Yes.
Feldman,
Out of
Line
Line.
with Brian Feldman, locally on
That's
Fox
right.
Sports Radio. Caleb, you do, and I mean this sincerely, you do a phenomenal job covering this team, and you have a very bright future in this business, my friend. One of these days, you're probably going to take my job. That would not surprise me.
Yeah.
But Caleb, congratulations on your success, my man, and look forward to talking to you again next week. Preview next game.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey, and Caleb, have fun and make sure you make a stop at Murphy's Bleachers right there outside of Wrigley Field. It's a good spot. I was just out there a couple of months ago. It's a
I
good
got
time.
it, man. Anybody with some good hot dogs, just point me in that direction.
Well, that would be Fenway Park for me personally. But Caleb, thank you so much for taking the time, my friend. Have fun out there tomorrow.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
All right, there
Thanks,
you go.
Caleb.
Caleb Herring, former UNLV quarterback, the last quarterback to bring UNLV to a bowl game. Okay, so this is going to be a lot of fun, Chris. I know you're very giddy. Calm yourself down. Coming up next segment, the guys from the Chippendale show at the Rio will be joining us. Boy, do I have a lot of questions for them. I promise you, folks, this is going to be an interesting interview, and we're going to have a ticket giveaway as well. Ryan Worley and Jason Michael Chippendales will be joining us next in studio. You're listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDON.